everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, bright and early. Hopefully you have your coffee in hand, whether you're here or at home. We're delighted to be here today and have a fantastic panel ahead for you. My name is Aoife McCaffrey. I'm an Associate Director in Grant Thornton in our Sustainability team, and I'm also co-chair of 100 Women in Finance Early Career Committee. 100 Women in Finance is a global organisation that promotes gender equity in finance. And we do that by promoting diversity, raising visibility, and empowering women to find their pathway to success. This is our fourth event with Climate Finance Week Ireland, which is brilliant, and we're really happy to be here. There's been some fantastic events over the course of the week, lots of really engaging discussions. We've had some really good announcements about the Centre of Excellence for Sustainable Finance here in Ireland. There's a new compliance course for professionals in sustainability, and there was a launch of the new FinTech strategy as well, Sustainable Finance Strategy for FinTech. So needless to say, lots of opportunities for professionals in this space, lots of opportunities for individuals looking to really push on with our sustainability agenda. So I'm really happy today to welcome loads of people to the panel. Probably the biggest panel that I've had, so this will be a test. First of all, we have Brian Mullan here from Microsoft. We have Ciara from Dechert, Aoife O'Sullivan from Skillnet, Sarah Dempsey from AAB, and we also are delighted to have Nicole Wiley, who's our COO of 100 Women in Finance. So today we're going to have a bit of a discussion just about the ESG skills. We're going to have a talk about everybody's backgrounds. We have obviously a great variety from across the industry, so that should be fantastic. So yeah, without further ado, I'll kick off to let everybody else speak. And we'll just start. I'd love if each of you could just maybe give a little bit of an overview as to your role, kind of the influence of sustainability within that, and just kind of introduce yourself to the audience. So I will start, not in order to mix things up. I will start with Sarah, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Sarah Dempsey, and I work in AIB in the sustainability team. I've been with AIB for just over 5 years. My background is actually in corporate affairs and reputation management and communications, stakeholder engagement, and I suppose that's been kind of a theme throughout everything I've done. Prior to banking, I was with a different bank, the RBS Group, for just over a decade, and then came into AIB 5 years ago, essentially when the government was looking to sell down the shareholding and going to the market, and the market was asking questions around actually ESG and sustainability, and then my experience got me into AIB, where we kind of kickstarted the program and kickstarted the agenda to where it is today. So a team of one, actually now to about a team of 20 odd who are supporting the agenda in AIB. But a very interesting journey, and great that actually sustainability and ESG is now kind of coming mainstream and part and parcel of everybody's role, irrespective of kind of what you do in an organisation. So that's me.
Great, thank you very much. Ciara, we will go to you next.
Sure, no problem. Hi, good morning. My name is Ciara. I'm a partner in Dechert in Dublin. Excuse me. I work in kind of financial services fund formation. I'm with Dechert 3 years now. Before that, I was with another international law firm in Dublin for a long time. I suppose somewhat similarly to Sarah, you kind of start in a bog standard financial services role in some ways, but we're very lucky in Dechert that we had a group when I joined. I had forecast about ESG being an area of interest for asset managers and for our various clients, and I suppose for me it was an area I was actually just interested in any event. Kind of going back to terrorizing the nuns when I was in third class, telling them about how there was a hole in the ozone layer and the convent was going to go on fire. So, March started then with ESG. So when I joined Dechert, I joined the ESG working group, and I suppose it was lucky in fact that just at that time there was a legislative agenda that was tallying with an area I was really interested in, and I'm sure many of your firms are the same. They allow you to be entrepreneurial in the areas that you're interested in. So I joined the group, and really kind of took it from there, and now would be very active in advising clients around SFTR and the ESG space.
Great, fantastic. And Nicole, I'll come to you.
Thank you. I'm Nicole Wiley. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of 100 Women in Finance today, where I've been in this role for about 7 weeks. I'll get it out of the way now. I'm neither Irish nor in my early career. So now we have that behind us. I'd spent the last 20 years at Morgan Stanley, where I was the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Client Engagement for their private markets practice. I'm a private equity and venture capital professional, and a lot of what I had done there was on their impact investing strategy. Mainly climate, but also around social impact as well. I worked with a team that came out of the World Bank, really setting the strategy, by signing a lot of the initiatives and really working through from the entrepreneurial state of play into something that became more mainstream. And very similar to some of the other themes that we're hearing here, the early part of my career, I worked at a large public accounting firm. It starts with a P, ends at a C. A straight up the fairway financial services professional. But across the way, moved into product formation, which turned into an interest in private equity, venture capital, and then were the emerging themes. It was around climate and then social impact. And then moving from there, identifying the opportunities both on a regulatory and a client perspective, and going from there, and then taking that and taking frankly, a corporate career that I loved, and going into the nonprofit space where I'm trying to really take those themes that are personally important to me and really bring into the community of having men and women really championing themselves across the world. And I did it 4 years before my daughter went to university, which in the US is a big deal because it's not paid for. So it's something I really do believe in. So thank you for having me here today.
Great, thank you, Nicole. Brian.
Great. Thanks, folks. Brian Mullan, worked for Microsoft for many years, both in Dublin and in Seattle. So my day job, I lead a data science team, and in the ESG space, a lot of the focus at the moment is on data and getting the data right. So I can at least bring my data science skills to the table. But if you go back slightly further in my career, I actually did an environmental science degree. That was my first degree, and then I completely changed course for my master's and ended up at Microsoft. So it's actually great to be able to reconnect with what was my initial degree. In Microsoft, we have a really strong sustainability strategy. The interesting thing, and maybe talk about it later, but is when I started getting involved in sustainability within Microsoft, it was really a Microsoft Ireland initiative. We were sort of going, hey, where would we want to start lean in on research and with local universities and stuff, and it always kept coming back to sustainability. I went to Seattle a few weeks later, and Microsoft announced its sustainability strategy, and what we had decided to do in Ireland was right front and center about what Microsoft globally wanted to do. So that was a bit of a thank goodness for that, but it also meant that we knew we had a bit of muscle behind us, that could help us on the journey. So yeah, that's how I got here today.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Aoife. Thanks. Hi everybody, I'm Aoife Sullivan. I'm a development advisor with Skillnet Ireland. So first of all, I don't know if anybody is familiar with Skillnet Ireland, but essentially we're a government support agency that helps businesses of all sizes basically upskill and talent develop their people. So this is hugely topical area for sure. While I don't directly work in it, my previous role in BDO, I was a senior marketing manager there. So I was the one that was tasked with communicating all the good stuff that we were doing. So now I'm on the other side, on the skills side. It's really topical. It's an exciting area to be in. And just to give you a flavor, like we have 72 networks across our portfolio. Some of them are sectorally aligned, some of them are regionally aligned. We do have a dedicated one for sustainable finance, and they're developing some really interesting programs around skill development in the area of ESG and sustainability. Just to give you a flavor in terms of what our networks are doing, in 2021, we had about 75 programs that were developed by our networks, talking about sustainability in this area. So again, it's a growing demand. That equated to about 800 companies participating in those programs. So this is here to stay. It's not going away, and plenty of opportunity to upskill. And thanks for inviting me here today. Great. So yeah, we have a fantastic panel. Very excited. I think we'll start. So it's great just to hear the kind of range of experience and how you come into things differently. I'd like to ask Ciara, just in terms of kind of that AIB journey, and where you are now in terms of the communications and collaboration, let's say, with Climate Finance Week, like what are the kind of, you know, learnings from that journey, even maybe from a personal perspective, like from where you were before to now?
Yeah, so when I came into AIB, I suppose fundamentally in my own career, and as I said, and I think similar to lots of people, I always had a view and always had a focus on actually the social impact of business, and actually that business could be a really, really positive force for good in communities and in the economy and in society. And in banking, you know, we really, you know, shot ourselves in the foot for the financial crisis. And from a reputation perspective, you know, banking is still pretty much on the floor globally and in Ireland. So there's a huge journey to travel. And when I came into AIB, you know, there was a view around government shareholding, you know, and neither party really felt that was the best move forward, which is correct. But actually, how are we going to get ourselves out of that? And one of the biggest challenges was trying to articulate the intangible assets and things like the value of banking around culture, around customer experience, around staff engagement, around impact of lending. And for about the first kind of year or two, it was a little bit, echo chamber is probably too strong a word, but definitely, you know, I mean, while I was brought in by senior people within the business, there was definitely, you know, a cohort of people who were kind of looking, going, yeah, I get it, but actually, we have just so many other issues right now. This is not near term, and kind of, yeah, I get it, but not quite now. And then, to be honest with you, you know, it was literally just kind of, you know, one small thing at a time. Just literally stakeholder engagement, internal stakeholder engagement. You know, I think I've got a warm lead here. It's a bit like sales, cold sales. A warm lead here. Let's progress that one. You know, I have another one. Let's progress that one. And all of a sudden, you know, we started building kind of, you know, a coalition of the willing. And then within AIB, then we had a new CEO, Colin Hunt, who came in. And Colin kind of sat down and said, you know, my ambition for AIB is this. You know, and we think that this is a huge opportunity, and we definitely want to be, you know, Ireland's Green Bank, and we think we can lead in this agenda, not just because it's actually regulation is coming down the track, or government insight is coming down the track, or there's all these other kind of competing priorities, but actually it makes really good business sense from a, you know, from a climate perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a social perspective, just from the impact and the good that finance can do. So we really, under his leadership, set off on this journey where, you know, we went, as I say, from a team of 1, 2, 3 to where we are now. So we have a small team that works at the center of, I mean, Ashley knows, of multi-skills, you know, with people in data, with people in regulation, with people in investor relations, with people who are clients, you know, climate scientists, people who are comms and stakeholder engagement, but we have a multidisciplinary team who are very small, but we're kind of like an octopus, and we kind of reach into the tentacles of the business. And we are really trying to re-engineer the business. So we have a view which is, on the outside, you know, AIB tells a very good story around sustainability and ESG and our strategy. We've been reporting for the last 6 years, you know, to the highest of standards globally. But internally within, that only gets you so far. You know, internally within the business, it has been literally like moving an oil tanker, for want of a better word. But, you know, we are re-engineering how we do business, and that is no mean feat. It takes every skill that everybody has in this room and everybody has in the panel, and it is not a quick win, and it definitely requires you to relate to different people in different ways. Stakeholder engagement is absolutely kind of central to that, but we're making huge progress, and you know, we are delighted with where we're at. Things like Climate Finance Week, you know, we're now sponsoring Climate Finance Week for our 4th year. We had our 6th sustainability conference on Monday, and that has given us enormous platforms to be able to communicate to our stakeholders, both here and abroad, about the importance of this agenda, not just for AIB, but actually for Ireland. And, you know, you talk about Microsoft and Microsoft's local ambition, you know, tallying with the global ambition. You know, Ireland actually, we punch well above our weight in lots of ways, you know, which is quite right, because we are very talented, we are very hungry, we are eager, we're great workers. But actually, Ireland can be a huge force for good. And I think actually, ultimately, you know, this is a really good agenda for Ireland to use its platform.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I think it's great to kind of hear that journey. And one of the things, just to pick up on what you said there about just the range of people that are involved across the teams, and it's kind of, I think that's one of the key things that I've been hearing or from speaking to different people, that especially with sustainability, it's so broad. There's so many areas to cover. There kind of is space for everyone, really, and we need everyone to row in. Aoife, I might just come to you on that piece in terms of the role that Skillnet plays in that, and kind of what you've seen maybe from like a demand perspective.
Yeah, and so for us, I guess what we're seeing, organizations are really looking for both the technical skills and very role-specific skills, but also looking for the transversal or the softer skills, so like your creativity, communication, critical thinking, that kind of thing. But mostly what we're seeing is the transferability of those skills. So I think once you have them, they'll really stand to you insofar as whatever role or whatever organization you move to, and those skills you can bring with you, and it does set you apart. But I suppose from our perspective, what we're seeing in terms of a recent skills report was published in partnership with our IFS Skillnet, and they're saying that there's a huge gap in terms of the current capability around sustainable finance now and the future demands. So that gap is growing. So clearly there's demand there in terms of building that capability in Ireland. And looking at even the sustainable finance roadmap that was published in 2021, first measure in that talks about Ireland being a leader in sustainable finance. So if we're to be a leader in that space, we have to have the skills in order to get there. So more and more of our Skillnet networks are looking at developing programs around sustainability, but particularly in sustainable finance. There's some really interesting work happening with our IFS Skillnet and sustainable finance.
Thank you. And Ciara, just to build on that as well, in terms of, you mentioned the dreaded SFTR, maybe dreaded to me only, but in terms
everyone
that's kind of coming from the reg angle, like, in terms of addressing that, like, if you find that when you're looking at, a team that's looking at that, have you had to look elsewhere for maybe particular skill sets, or bring in maybe expertise on certain elements of it at all?
Yeah, I think without getting bogged down too much in the technicalities of it, because none of us really want to think about it. It's the one that keeps me up at night more instead. I think there's been a combination of things. I think when you go back to when kind of SFDR first was mooted, and it was kind of a little bit of an airy-fairy thing, and people are a bit like, yeah, it'll be fine, until you kind of came to the crunch time of March last year, when people started genuinely freaking out about it. I certainly have to learn a little bit on the job, being honest with you. And it's such an evolving area in terms of every day there's a new pronouncement from the FAMA, from the Commission, from the ESAs, from the Central Bank, from the CSSF, the Swedish regulators doing something different, all of that. So it is something you have to learn as you're kind of going along, being honest. And it's been tricky to advise clients on that because it's a movable feast. But I think probably linking back into what Brian is probably looking at a bit, where the issue crops up, I think maybe not so much as the legal advisor, but for the actual clients, is around the data and the reporting. And I suppose when you're looking at, again, without getting too boring, level 2, the kind of proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating. Yeah. But in order to be able to do that, people need the data. And I think there's even an acknowledgement from the regulators that there isn't enough information out there for people on that. And particularly, you also have to look at SFDR and its global impact. Without speaking too ill of the United States, there is a cultural buy-in in Europe about climate change and ESG and the thing that we have to do. Whereas, I work a lot with my colleagues in the US, and even you see the noise coming out of the SEC. It's slightly more of a political issue over there than it is here. It is viewed as a scientific issue in Europe, whereas I think there's certain elements in the US where it is a political issue. So you kind of have to deal a little bit with that as well, on top of so in Europe there's lots of regulations about issuers having to give you the information, so it's a little bit easier to get the data. But for people who are outside of Europe, where the kind of local regulation isn't there, it's much harder, and that is where actually we would see huge gap for our clients. Yeah. It's around the data points, the data information, and the data analysts. And to just pick up on something that Aoife was saying, like, ESG started out as something kind of niche, and now it is like, it's here to stay, because it's being hardwired into every single piece of financial services legislation that is going. So you know, if you were trying to be savvy about things, you could say, well, this is an area that's just going to continue to grow. But I think it's probably going to be over to people like Brian to help solve the client's data issue. Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, I'll just leave that.
Yeah.
Were we all eyes on
Yeah.
Brian? might give Nicole an opportunity. But have you seen even, you know, I know you had a very extensive career in the impact investing space, like you've seen a change in kind of attitudes or like, because it's not, you know, impact investing itself isn't something that was new, but I guess it's evolved in terms of the ask and what people are looking for.
That's a great question. The evolution has really been tremendous, and I think it is in part local or regional. I mean, you're exactly right about how the US view, and then other similarly situated locations where it's viewed as feel good in some cases, maybe a little less institutionalized in some parts. But then in others, I'll view it very much as like the financial services industry, where it's becoming very, very regulated, like the SEC, where you're building, where you have accounting policy groups. Your firms like Morgan Stanley have 100, 200 people teams really building out around all the intricacies about implementing SFDR and the like, and what's coming next, the data analytics and all of it. And I imagine in a year, it's probably 1,000 people as it becomes increasingly complex. Then on the other side, it's people who need to, the coalition of the willing. I love that. It's a little bit of forming that in other parts of the world, of just trying to bring the business case together of why this is good business and why you need to do that, because it is highly politicized. And that's another tricky element to that. I think it's an overwhelming task. I think what's really interesting, and for someone in the earlier part of their career, is recognizing that there's going to be so many career pivots and twists that could come out of this. And we're not going to necessarily know today what they're going to look like. The one thing I can say for absolute certain is when I started my career, I would not say that I would have spent time understanding the SFDR or hiring somebody who had a specialty in carbon accounting for basically around scope 4 emissions. Anybody who saw my science grades in high school and university would know that I'm not qualified at all. But that's where these conversations are going. And people who are specialized, and then more importantly, people who can take that level of detail and explain it to a broader audience of why it's important, why that accountability matters, and what role others have to play, whether they're expert or not, where they can contribute is really important. Those are going to be the folks that set themselves apart.
Great. Brian, you're not off the hook yet. So how are you going to solve broking? I'm joking. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Train AI work that Microsoft is doing and the research piece around that.
Sure. Yeah. No worries. And look, a lot of the conversation here really resonates this morning about the challenge. And one of the things I would say, so we're doing a research project with Maynooth University and Science Foundation Ireland at the moment called Train AI. If you want to read about it, there's trainai.com. You can go have a look at it. But I'm going to take a step back just before I talk about it just for a second, because you know, I agree with you with Ireland. Like I think Ireland, we really do punch above our weight when it comes to this sort of stuff, and we just need to keep doing that. You know, like within Microsoft, nobody asked us in the company, hey, Ireland, go build a sustainability strategy and go do a research project with local universities. Nobody asked. We came up with it ourselves. You know, we went around the doors in our own company, knocking the doors, asking people for money, and we eventually got the money for it. You know, you know, and that was huge, because it then gave us a seat at the table in Ireland, and I mean with universities, with fantastic collaboration with Science Foundation Ireland, to really build out this project, you know. And what this project is about, so what Train AI is about, it's a project. We've got 50 PhD students across Maynooth University, is the lead university, fantastic university we're partnering with, but all the other universities in Ireland have PhDs that are working as part of the project as well. And what we're actually trying to do is we're trying to build much more accurate models to measure the climate around us, you know. So what we actually have at the moment, you'll never see them because they're all sort of too remote, but we've like 30 test stations across, you know, Ireland, where you've got like a mini sort of mobile phone mast with all these sensors on it and all this equipment, which is basically measuring the environment around you. And this is where the data comes into play, because what's unique about the project, like you probably sit there saying, oh, well, I've heard of a project in the States that's doing this, or in Europe that's doing this, or whatever. What's really interesting is we're bringing together unique data sets, and this was the brainwave of the Maynooth guys, so they get full credit for it. But what we've actually done is we're collecting data in a particular site in Ireland, but we're also then using drones to collect data at a higher level. We're then using LiDAR and radar, and then we're using satellite imagery, and we're bringing all that together, and then trying to build more accurate models, and why I think Ireland's got a role to play here is Ireland is we're a unique ecosystem. Like, you can go to some states in the US and the soil type and the climate is the same for the entire state. We've got we've got peatlands, croplands, forestry, arable lands, like you name it. We have a real mix within a very, very small space, So on an island like our own, we can actually build really, really rich models, which then can be extrapolated to the EU, to the US, So, it's an exciting project from not just from an Irish perspective, but about how it could actually scale. And what I mean there is, like, the EU are very interested in the project at the moment, because I think it was touched on earlier. There's all these policies coming out at the moment. Like, the EU are about to launch more policies around climate change, and they're actually looking to not companies like ourselves, projects like ourselves, to sort of go, how are we actually going to measure this? And that's actually one of the biggest challenges. So, that's where we're hoping maybe something like Terrain AI can play a role.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think you said it there. Like, there's so much innovation. There's lots of opportunity. It's been mentioned numerous times about us punching above our weight, but I think it was said earlier on, I think it might have been Sean Kidney earlier on in the week was mentioning that 70% of expenditure is needed in developing nations as well. So I think there's a piece there about us kind of really fostering a skill set here and building that capability out, and then taking that elsewhere as well. So I think maybe just bring it back then to for people in the room and people online from an individual perspective. What do you think like some of the key skills are to kind of work in this space? We touched on diversity, but maybe some of the people that you're working with, what would you kind of, for some of our maybe early career members as well, what do you think some of the key attributes? Ciara, I'll come to you.
Yeah, like, I kind of remember something that actually one of the partners at work always talks about, and I actually think, to be fair, she may have got it from another book, about trying to do what's most impactful for your career for the day. And sometimes what's most impactful might necessarily look like the most pressing thing, particularly when we all have the tyranny of the inbox and it's coming in and you're kind of getting so flustered and you're focusing on that. So I think, in terms of your career, it is good to kind of be a little bit strategic sometimes. And you can't get up every morning and be strategic because, there's work demands and there's life. But if you have some time to kind of think about overall your kind of picture about, is this the thing that's actually going to give me the best benefit in my career at a given moment in time, I think is a great way to look at it at some point during the day, not all the time. And I've been lucky in terms of the fact that, it just worked. I liked ESG and I came into the space. So you can look at it in terms of, okay, this is a massively growing area, as Aoife said, as Ciara said, as everyone on the panel has said. So maybe even if you don't have a kind of a natural bent to it, you're just going, I want to kind of create a niche for myself and a USP, because ultimately everybody needs a USP in their career. I think you need a sponsor and you need a USP. So they're the two things I think you need to be successful in any career. And ESG is very much a USP at the moment, and it's only going to continue to grow to be a USP. And I think picking up on what someone said earlier as well, about how we don't even know what those jobs are going to be in 5 or 6 years' time. You're at the forefront of you're kind of at the vanguard of being able to create an ESG career if you would like to do it. And it is about being kind of a little bit strategic in what you're doing, looking at, well, where is the growth area? Where can I kind of make my little niche and make my little mark, where I'm the person who understands that little quirk of whatever, be it the SFDR legislation, the PhD project, impactful investing, how do I move the oil tanker? You figure out a little bit what your skill is and what you think your USP can be, and then go for it is what I would say. And you need a little bit of thick skin too, because somewhere along the line things go awry and you have to be able to kind of pick yourself up and dust yourself off again. But that's kind of how I think is a good way to think about your career in general. it's that kind of impactful piece, and having a little bit of strategy, not to be entirely Machiavellian, but a little bit of strategy in terms of your overall where you'd like to see yourself going.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely concur. It's funny, my eldest child has just started university, and when he was looking at what courses to do, and we got someone in to just have a chat with him who we know, who said, whatever you do something that you enjoy, because if you do something that you enjoy, you will naturally be good at it. So echoing absolutely what you say, don't feel that just because sustainability and ESG it is absolutely kind of the flavor of the month, but it is here to stay. Don't feel that you need to change career or pivot or do something entirely different. So when you talk about strategy and being strategic, absolutely, but at the very start of it, what are you good at? What are you interested in? Whether it's data, whether it's regulation, whether it's stakeholder engagement, whether it's actually financing, whatever it is, that's your core, that's your starting point. Then how does this, whether it's Skillnet, whether it's training, how does this then influence what you're already good at, what you're already looking to do? Because you don't have to fundamentally go, God, I thought I was going to be like a data person, and now there's this whole ESG stuff. Flip, I need to like move and do something entirely different. Absolutely not. Because this is coming mainstream, how do you bring this into what you're already good at, what you're already doing, and then find your niche within that? So as you are a little bit strategic, are a little bit Machiavellian, but it is your USP, recognizing that this is actually BAU, this is now mainstream. That's
Agree. I totally agree with that. Even I guess from my own experience coming through college, and I did actuary, which was great. Left that one very quickly. But I guess from a personal perspective, I would have always looked to the kind of impact and purpose piece was really important to me. And when I came out of college, like the role that I'm in now didn't exist, so I had no idea this is where I was going to be able to end up. And I guess from the same kind of advice, actually, and must be chatting to the same person, but they were like, focus on what you like, but also try and build that kind of core skill set, and then see how you can apply that to something that you're interested in or passionate about. So for me, it's been really interesting, because I would have always thought that I couldn't have got that kind of purpose piece from financial services. I kind of thought, oh, well, I'll build this skill set, and then I need to be outside of that space. I need to be in kind of maybe an NGO environment, and I kind of the financial services piece, I was like, yeah, that'll be grand. And I just think it's so interesting to see that, like, my own learning evolve, but also how it's spoken about now. And you talked about, reputationally, where from a banking perspective, where that was to where it's moving to now. And I think there is that huge piece about, we have like a massive role to play in this transition, and moving forward, we need to redirect capital. So for me, that was huge to kind of have that realization that, okay, I can actually work in this industry and contribute to something that's much bigger than me. And that's what I was looking for. It's not what everybody is looking for, but I do think there's space with that, with the sustainability agenda. Aoife, I might just come back to you, but just maybe if you can talk a little bit more about the actual what courses you actually have, and that piece would be really interesting.
So I suppose my advice would be like exploring the opportunities that you have for upskilling, because during the pandemic, training dramatically changed. A lot of employers are sort of saying, if there was an on-site training program or initiative, it was like, well, we can't actually release you for 2 days. We really need you on site. That completely changed massively. So I think you have all of these online resources and programs that are customized to meet your working busy schedule. So I would definitely do your research. Back to sort of Ciara's point about having a sponsor, having somebody who has your back to say, I really encourage you down this road, I think is really important, and will help you kind of present your business case for why you want to do it. But some of the specific courses, and back to the skills gap, interestingly, some of the interventions now that these reports are looking at are saying, not only is it about we need to get people at university level to say we need to build in ESG modules into these undergraduate degrees and master's programs, but also reskilling and upskilling existing people like yourselves. So, to give you a flavor, I guess, of some of the programs out there from a sustainable finance perspective, they have a certificate, a CPA certificate in ESG investing. So that's covering all of the basics around investing in ESG, responsible investing, your analysis, valuation, interrogation, and that's for all kind of investment practitioners, irrespective of where you are in the value chain. And also you kind of mentioned it earlier as well, actually, the brand new, I think first of its kind program.
First in the world.
It's first in the world, wow. So it's a sustainable finance diploma, professional diploma in sustainable finance for finance professionals. So really, these are the conversations that are happening in the boardroom around ESG, how they're measured, how are we faring against them as an organization. And this program is purpose-built, designed for those people working in that area. So all I will say is that you have got like loads of avenues to pursue. And check out our website, Skillnet for blatant plug. Help to navigate. Skillnet.ie.
Great, thanks, Aoife. Thanks, Aoife. Brilliant. Nicole, I might come back to you. I think I mentioned there about, from my own perspective, finance and the NGO space. I think you've somehow managed to marry both of them, which I'm very jealous about. Can you maybe tell me a little bit, and I know you're only in the job a couple of weeks now, but just that kind of move from where you were into 100 Women in Finance, that'd be interesting.
Happy to, and it's actually pretty similar in that I think everyone has a way, everyone always has a platform to share what they know. And we also said a really interesting point in time where there are so many resources available to learn, to train, coming off those points, that we can all be much more educated, knowledgeable, and evolving much more quickly. And then it comes to a point, if you don't share what you know and get that out into a broader market, what good is it? What good is it? And having been at Morgan for as long as I was, really loving the space. I loved being out with clients. And that was in part education, that was in part building out the ecosystem. It's part, and I applaud Ireland. I also applaud Iceland, where I spent quite a bit of time, where another place where folks were really punching above their weight with respect to climate initiatives. Like, here's where people are doing things really well. And then you go back to the States, I'm like, and guys, no. and also I started to hear a lot of conversations in bubbles and in clusters. And when I'd been a member of 100 Women in Finance for 12 years, I think was the exact number. And I realized the conversations I was hearing in Iceland, in Seattle, where I also spent a bunch of time, I'm like, these conversations are happening all over the world with like-minded people, but the networking is not necessarily happening across the system. Like, that needs to be someone's full-time job. And then going to some of the other comments that we're making there, like, I think the guidance that I would have to anybody is, it could be your full-time job. If something looks like it's a pretty daunting task, but it's something that's important to you, you sort of take the deep breath of, like, could that person be you? What is your path to do that? And can you take the body damage that it might bring to you to bring together some pretty lofty goals? Because frankly, it isn't easy taking a few million conversations of people who are interested, who want to move things forward on very complex matters, and at least starting to have a framework, which is why I took a very orderly, regulated environment. And I became a chartered accountant by choice. That talks about how I feel about the sense of order generally as a person. But taking some of that structure and bringing that out there to start making those connections, which is why I made the move over. I think the other part of that is to make it credible, and then sort of tagging to some of your other questions, is it has to be authentic to you as you build your career. Otherwise, there is no point. People will know. And I spent a lot of time in client development as well as investing. And I wouldn't sell anything that I wasn't able to invest myself or deliver myself. And I don't mean my team. I don't mean the broad, my old life, Morgan Stanley organization. I meant me. Because I wasn't going to create a mess that somebody else that I liked had to clean up, that just felt wrong. And when you bring that credibility to what you're doing, I think it resonates more. And I think it also brings that entrepreneurial skill set of, I'm in this with you, let's bring solutions, and you work with them and then bring that. That's part of why I came to 100 Women, to work with volunteer committees across the world, and being in rooms like this one to find people who are interested, and implore everyone to go to trainings, both as many as you can come to, and then evangelize them. I went to campus. It's everyone has an audience, and using that and just getting that out there, and then the networks will form. Whether it's the networks that I want to see in my lifetime, I'm not sure, but we need to be better than we are today, and here to get that started.
Fantastic. And Brian, just in the spirit of that kind of message on like collaboration and bringing people together, how do you find, so I know when we talked about this before with Train AI, that partnership's been in place for a number of years, hasn't it? With how do you find that as Microsoft in terms of where that started from, and now there's, you know, where it is now and where it might evolve to in terms of what's come out of the relationship by bringing people together?
Yeah, no, sure. The thing I would say is, and it's actually just great to hear a couple of points there around, you know, upskilling yourselves. You still need the experts in the room too, you know, and you know, like for example, if you take Train AI, where Microsoft, where we felt we could add value is on the data architecture, and you know, and the modeling side of things, you know, initially. But we also got, so that's where I went in initially, right? But then I realized, as you get to know the network within your company, I actually realized how many people were involved in sustainability. And I was able to bring sustainability experts into the conversation as well. And they were very willing. Like, the thing I would say is, like, get out there and knock the doors in your organizations, because people are really willing to talk to you about the space, you know. Like Satya Nadella, our CEO, said a number of years ago that every company is a software company. And I remember thinking about it at the time, what does he mean by every company is a software company? But like, I even realized during COVID, like my local barbershop is a software company now as well, because everything's online, you know. But in Microsoft now, the conversation is every company is a sustainability company, you know. Like, so that the software thing, oh, that was 5 years ago. Every company is a sustainability company, you know. So everybody in every company should feel that they have the power to lean in, you know. But to your point just around, like, it goes back to the Irish ecosystem. We've just an incredibly strong ecosystem. If you look at Science Foundation Ireland, I started partnering with Science Foundation Ireland about 4 years ago. They set up some centres of research training for PhD in various particular areas of research: machine learning, machine translation, data science, etc. And those were my sort of core areas. So we got involved in sponsoring PhD students there, bringing them in for internships, etc. Really, really rewarding stuff. Some amazing people. You know, the conversation then with SFI moved on to, is there anything else that Microsoft's interested in, you know? And we actually got a bunch of us in a room in Dublin, and we started whiteboarding what areas of research would we be interested in, and there was lots of different stuff there, you know. But maybe because a lot of us come from maybe a former agricultural background, it kept coming back to either agricultural tech or sustainability, you know. And so that's where we were able to narrow it down and say, actually, you know what, sustainability is there, we would really like to go after. You know, and carbon seemed to just be one of those real challenges at the time. So, you know, sat down with Science Foundation Ireland, sat down with a number of the universities, and come up with Train AI, you know.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's really, yeah, important, I think, to call out that collaborative piece that comes back to diversity of thought and a space kind of for everyone. I guess what would be great is if we could get a little bit of a tip from everyone. Ciara, I'm coming to you first, so start thinking. Just in terms of you know, getting into this space and sustainability, maybe just some advice for people based on your own experience or whatever else.
Sure, I think it's slightly kind of what people have been saying already, but I think it is very important to kind of you do need to have an interest. I don't think you can kind of feign an interest in an area like this, or actually, in fact, any area that you ultimately want to go into, because the fact of life is, sadly, we spend about 11 and a half hours of our every day where we work, doing what we work, thinking about what we work. And, you know, if you don't have a kind of, I suppose to use the Irish expression, a grow for it or a spark, with all the best will in the world and all the learning in the world and all the upskilling in the world, your heart just won't be in it. So, you know, for me, I always laugh and kind of picking up something you said, like initially when I did law, my intention was to be a human rights lawyer. So I'm kind of went a little bit off path with that by becoming a fund structuring lawyer. But you can you can kind of bring your grows back in around somehow. So for me, it was that I'm interested in this area and it suited me and I liked it. But I think just because something is a buzzword as well, and actually that's sorry, this is disrespectful to ESG because I don't think it is a buzzword. It was a couple of years ago. But if you genuinely are like, look, I have absolutely no interest in this, there's actually kind of no point in going into it, or there's absolutely no point in going into something that you really are like, I have no interest in it. So I think the first thing I would say is it interesting to you? Do you like it? Has it kind of caught a little bit of a spark of your imagination? And then really it's about kind of just asking to be involved. I'm sure all of your organizations are similar to my own, where if you say, look, I'm interested in this, you can get involved. Like if you don't ask, you're not going to get told yes. So I think that's the other thing. And I think particularly, I think women are a little bit guilty of kind of not asking. So you do have to sometimes remind yourself to go, look, I need to ask the question, can I get involved? And certainly when I joined Dechert, I heard about this group and I just said, oh, I'd like to join that group. And yeah, you might say it's a bit easier, I was a little bit more senior, but I think that's it. Do you have a little bit of spark of interest in the area? And also you can join something and then go, actually, I don't like it, and leave it as well. Like that's also, I think it's equally important to know what you don't like as to know what you like. But put your hand up, because we hear this continuously at the end of year reviews. People are going, oh, well, I would have loved to have been involved in that. People aren't mind readers as well. So you do need to kind of express a desire, because, you know, with the best will in the world and the best mentoring relationships and all that, unless someone kind of says to you, I would like to do that, you're kind of going, would they be interested in it? Would they not be interested in it? So that's what I would say. Speak up if you'd like to do it. And also if you don't like it after you start doing it, just leave.
Aoife? Yeah, I think there's kind of a twin track approach to it. Like it's sort of, you know, having those conversations internally. And I don't want to repeat some of the points that Ciara's made, but it is getting involved and talking to some of your peers who are already working in the space in your organization, but also then taking the formal approach by upskilling yourself. So arming yourself with the knowledge if it's an area of interest to you. But not only that, back to kind of what Nicole said, be the evangelist then. If you're passionate about it, if you're upskilling yourself, you know, people are drawn in by people who are really enthusiastic or passionate about something. So I think you'll get a lot of allies if it's the case. First of all, you're interested in the space, you have the knowledge, you're training yourself, but you're also sharing and imparting that knowledge with your colleagues and your peers and driving that sort of narrative and driving the agenda. So you really have a huge opportunity, but it really, again, it's, are you interested enough to want to pursue it and to want to take it? And to Ciara's point, don't do it or don't feel, oh, I need to have this kind of qualification, or I need to feel I'm trained in this area because it looks good on my CV. If you don't have the genuine interest, you know, you can observe.
Sarah? Yeah, echoing exactly what's been said. And I the way I frame it, certainly for myself, is be able to tell your own story. So you own your own narrative, and you know, with all the best will in the world, all the training, all the upskilling, you know, you might want to do this because you're passionate about it for whatever reason, and whether it's impact, whether it's just because it interests you, whether it's because you're into data, whatever else. Do take the time before you make a decision to sit back and actually just write it down. We don't spend enough time on what we call, you know, what might be called the intangible stuff, the softer skills. Whatever your role, whatever your interest, before you go and do something, do take time and sit and reflect and write your narrative about why you're interested in doing something, what you've done that, you know, enables you to put yourself forward. Because exactly as has been said, unless you're actually interested, people will see through it. You know, people will see through that you're doing this purely because it's a, you know, it's a career play or whatever. If you're authentic about it, and if you're authentic with your own narrative about why it's important to you and what you think you can add, actually, that's a really compelling thing to have in your kit bag.
And also echo everything that's been said. What I'd add to that is learning and leading is an imperfect process. I think you need to have that in the back of your mind, that along the way, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make the wrong call. You're not going to be the smartest person in the room. And that is a good thing, even if it is painful at the time. And you will need to learn who, like as Brian said, who the experts are. It's like being conversant, but recognizing that you're not the expert and getting that sense about you. And I mean, people will fall. One of the things I've studied over the years is why people fall out of careers, or where people, they plateau. And a lot of that is, it's making that transition from contributing to leading and the painfulness of some of that process. But if you keep in the back of your mind, this is not supposed to be easy. This is my learning experience now. This is the skill I need to learn. That is really helpful. And then also one of the things that I kept in mind as part of, with respect to ESG, sustainability and climate, is I actually started buying most of my clothes at charity shops. Everything here is charity shop. Like it's part of like a personal branding thing. Like keeps things out of landfills. It's fun to do. You would attract a different audience. In my case, it's my 14-year-old daughter, who is the most difficult audience known to man. If you have teenagers, but you start to recognize there's different ways to do it and evolve over time.
Brian, sorry.
That's all right. No, of course. No, hey, look, I everything that's we said definitely resonates. The thing I would say as well, just within your organization, get the community going. Like, be it, I don't know what tools you're using. If you're in Teams, you can set up a Teams channel. That's your sustainability channel, and you get a community going. Like we've a sustainability channel in work now that's got like thousands of people on it. And, when somebody sets up a sustainability call, you'd be amazed how many people are actually interested in coming on to find out what other people know. So I would just encourage, folks to really, to do that. The other thing, the way we sort of think about it, the way we've broken it down in our heads in Microsoft is there's three sort of buckets, and you guys play a huge role in the third bucket, and probably the first. There's the meaning of net zero. Like everybody talks about it, but do you actually know what it means? That's where the UN, the EU, the financial regulators all come in, and they're sort of working and crafting what is meant by net zero. Second layer is all around the data, so it's the measurement, and there's a lot of good platforms out there today. In our case, is the cloud for sustainability, but you can key all your data in, it'll give you your figures back as to how green you are. So that's the second piece. But the third piece where you guys play such a huge role is the enabling the markets for. So like if you don't have the regulation, then you don't have the measures. You need the markets for net zero, and that's where the financial side of things really plays a huge role in creating those markets or helping to invest in those markets. So I would just encourage everybody to lean in your organization. If there's not a community set up already, set one up and get it going. You'd be amazed how many people would be interested, and actually how many skills you already have in your organization.
Great, thank you so much. I think it's been really interesting just to hear all the different perspectives. Had a lot of kind of similar discussions around, I think that piece that you mentioned there about looking for community, I think that's one thing that's probably really important in this space. It can be very overwhelming. There's a lot to take in, and it's very broad, which gives a lot of opportunities for people to kind of find their space within it. But at the same time, I know when I'm getting news alerts every other day, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're just pending. So I think I do think it's really important to find a community within that, whether that's within work, through other kind of networking opportunities, and as we said, we need a diversity of talent in Ireland as well. So look a little bit broader than what's right in front of you, especially to those that are building teams as well. Like we can't just be looking at our traditional skill sets. There's upskilling, as Aoife mentioned, Skillnet. But also it's a brilliant opportunity for us to bring in people that have, non-traditional backgrounds into this space as well. Brian, you're mentioning your degree and coming back around to that, and Ciara, maybe you will end up being a human rights lawyer, who knows. But I just think, look, the everything that's going on at the moment, it is, I think the key message is there's lots of opportunities, lots of room for everyone to kind of play a part in this journey. So we need to just get in there and jump in and take those opportunities as a centre of excellence as well. So I guess just in terms of wrapping up before I pass over to Nicole, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Climate Finance Week Ireland and also Sustainable Finance Ireland, Catherine and Stephen in particular, for really supporting this strategic partnership. As I said, this is our fourth event, and a big thank you to Jennifer as well, who's been key in organising all of this, standing in the back of the room. Thanks, Jennifer. And as well, thank you to KPMG for this fantastic space. It's been amazing to come in. The music did freak me out a little bit this morning. I felt like I was in a film, but it's beautiful, a really, really great spaces, and it's fantastic to be here. And just thank you so much to all our panelists for giving your words of wisdom. I think it's been a really, really interesting discussion. I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully everybody else that's tuned in has too. And I might just pass over to Nicole, if you don't mind, for some closing remarks.
So thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here today and to be on the panel with all of you, and I echo the thanks to Sustainable Finance Ireland, and to be able to be part of the 4th time for climate. You know, the US needs a climate finance week, just FYI. I take that back there. And the narrative, I think, is so important. I mean, whether it's part of 100 Women in Finance or another group that resonates with you, or going to for formal skills training or within your own organization, I think the message is very clear of just, it's not just what you know, it's who you know, who you're sharing it with, and building those networks. Because over time, I generally do not give advice because it just proves what an idiot I was yesterday. But it's your hard skills and your soft skills are very, very important. But as your career develops, it's the networks of people that you have built that you can work with, call on, and develop. And that is both locally and globally will become increasingly important to you in an increasingly global workplace. I mean, so participating in as many networks formally and informally as you can will only benefit your career. And you, as more importantly, you as a person. People are cool. I like people. I'm a people person. People, and just the people that you meet along the way really will frame how you look at the world, how you solve problems, and how you maybe give you creative solutions to events. I've been talking too much, clearly. And 100 Women in Finance in Dublin will host many events over the course of a year. I'd say on average 10 to 12 in person. Room sizes generally like this, where you're meeting, I'll say between 50 and 75 people in varying stages of the career, talking about important, hard topics on the investment side, but also things that are relevant to varying stages of your career. And it just gets you meet each other and develop the relationships. And if this is not the organization for you, and we warmly welcome men and women, please do find the one that does resonate to you, and join and encourage your friends to come along, because we only work and gain momentum when we do it together. So thank you wholeheartedly for welcoming me today with my dying voice and my American hoarseness that is not contributing. The US is not punching above its weight. And thank you so much.